Hello again! You don't know me and I don't know you, or rather, my name is KJ Kreativjägerin, and what if the playable Genshin Impact characters would live in the nations of their element? I came up with an idea where each nation has its own island shaped in a symbol of the element. I organized each playable character in a hierarchy that I came up with that you can also find as a playlist on YouTube that I made. And I know in the playlist it says that there's one video missing, but that's only because this video was taken down and I didn't notice at that time, so now I can't delete it from the playlist I made. But don't worry, every character has his own demo there, so nothing is missing even though it says that something is missing. In the playlist are character demos as also trailers. I created a short story for this idea where war between the islands is trying to get resolved by some sort of Olympic Games. New characters will be added once their demo trailer drops on YouTube. English isn't my first language. Yes, I do have an accent. I hope that won't bother too much because I would like to read out this very short story I came up with. And also I would like to add some more things to the characters I did not say anything to in my other video that was about the tier list. But don't worry, I won't say any spoilers for the current Archon quest or the current event story quest, but there might be spoilers for the rest of the game. And at the end of the video I would also like to share my future plans. But now let's click on this little short story, and I already have read out the summary for you, so I will start below after reading out the title. Genshin Impact Elemental Islands Olympics by KJ Kreativjägerin. On the endless sea, there exist 7 islands that are arranged in a spiral in the order of the rainbow. And to basically show how I planned this, it would basically look like this. Please imagine that the white background here would be the water, the sea. So you would start with the Pyro Island, then it would go to the right with the Geo Island. Then it will continue with the Dendro Island, then the Animal Island, Cryo Island, Hydro Island, and at the last, the Electro Island. And I guess there is a little bit of a gap between here, but that's because, well, for the future planning, I would say. I mean, we will get Canrea, we will get Celestia, and we'll see where I put them then. Or if we get playable characters from those areas, you know. But let's continue. Each island has its own culture, its own element, and its own Archon. Additionally, each island reacts differently with the sea, which can be seen as a protect mechanism against intruders. The Pyro Island has its phlogiston flowing into the water. The Geo Island has crystallized water around the island. The Dendro Island has vegetation growing out of the water. The Animal Island is floating high up in the sky and has waterfalls flowing down that connect to the sea. The Cryo Island has frozen water around the isle. The Hydro Island is located higher up but lower than the Animal Island and has its big waterfalls surrounding the island, and the Electro Island has electric water around the island. Nod-Krai is located behind the Cryo Island and is surrounded by dense fog. A path connecting to the Cryo Island leads to Nod-Krai, so those two regions are one big island. Meaning that basically I could imagine that in the cryo symbol, one of these little thingies could be a bit bigger and stretched out, so you would have the path connecting to Nod-Krai, and that would be Nod-Krai, because well, in the very early stages it says that Nod-Krai is part of Snezhnaya, or if not, then at least well, very close to Snezhnaya. So to also make it easier for me, that I would combine it with the Cryo Isle. The Archons gave pieces of their power to the inhabitants, which got blessed by visions. Anyone who receives a vision must now live on the island that corresponds to the element of the vision. It does not matter which island one originally came from. And yes, not every character has a vision, but I guess you can say that everyone who has or is able to wield an element. I should probably add that to that, but let's continue. On each island there is a hierarchy. First, Archon, god of the island and the element. Second, head of city, mayor of the city. Third, deputies, leaders of some sort or helping the head of city in various ways. Fourth, protectors, fighters who protect the city or support it with, for example, expeditions. And last, fifth, citizens, villagers who live their daily life doing their everyday jobs. There is a war between the islands. Only those who possess a vision can take part in the battles. And also the ones who have an element and not just a vision. Most of the time the protectors are taking the front lines, but the vision bearers that are only citizens must also take part in the war. To find an end to this endless war, one idea was formed to have so-called Olympic Games, where each elemental island gets the chance to exclude themselves out of the war. So every year there are held these Olympic Games where the winner is granted the privilege of not participating in the wars between the islands. Their island will be left alone for that year. Only those who possess a vision are allowed to participate in these Olympic Games and have to compete as a team to represent their elemental island. Each Olympic game was chosen by each Archon and will be held on each of the islands, giving everyone a home advantage at some point. The goal of the story is to reach the top and win the Olympic Games to have a right to persuade for peace between the islands. Nobody should be forced on leaving their home only because they received a blessing from the gods. The same goes for participating in the Olympic Games and in the war. And now onto the hierarchy. First we have the Pyra Island, where the Archon is of course Mavrika. And the head of Natlan, in my other video I stated that Mavrika could also be the head of Natlan. And I also said, well, what if Bennett? But with Bennett there is the problem, I am a bit nitpicky about this. And he does have Mondstadt vision, so the people who are head of the city, I would like to have them to first have the element of the island where they're from, and then I would like for the vision to also be the vision, how the vision looks like from the island. Like, for example, we should have someone who has pyro and would have a Netlanese vision. And I would like for that to be Shibalanke. But he isn't a playable character. I would love for him to be a playable character. I will probably put him here in brackets for now, because in my playlist I could put his fight against Mavrika there, so like kind of like a placeholder, because well, he is like, I mean, why are they making him a playable character? He will be so good for this role. And even if like Shibalanke wouldn't be there and it would be only the child without like Shibalanke's influence, there's still so many possibilities. I mean, we have like we saw his fighting skills, like with his fists, his pyro fists that he had. So that would be a great opportunity. But yeah, because he isn't a playable character, I can only put him in brackets. And for the citizens, we have Yanfei, who is just a lawyer. Gaming is actually also a guard, but he's only doing that so he can finance his wushu dancing, which means that he's still just a citizen, even though he's, well, protecting the city because he's like protecting the merchants. But we can just say that if he didn't have any problems with financing his wushu dancing, he wouldn't even be a guard. So yeah. And Klee is actually part of the Knights of Favonius, but well, she is a child, and while that isn't really well, I did put Collie and Yao Yao as protectors, but Klee is mostly doing like her own thing. And like we established earlier in the story, even the citizens have to fight in the wars and also have to take part in the Olympic Games. So Klee would, well, fight anyways. The same goes with Gaming. And now we go on to the Geo Isle. And therefore the citizens, Yunjin is, well, just an opera singer. Arataki Ito is, well, he's living on the streets. And Chiori is also just a fashion designer. And then for the Dendro Island, we have for the citizen category Baiju, who is just a doctor. I mean, technically he's protecting people because he's medicating them, but that's more like, well, he's treating this more like a job, you know? Kave is also just an architect. Emily is perfume designer, and yes, she is actually a forensic cleaner, which means that she is basically a protector, but more on the secret side, because for the outside she's just a perfume designer. And Kirara is also basically, yeah, a deliverer for the goods you order. Yeah, exactly. So, and moving on to the Anmo Isle, I think you can spot that I actually changed Chikanoin Hazel's position from the citizen to the protectors category. And that is actually to a very lovely comment I got by, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Cold Hazard, where this person stated that, well, Shikanoin Hazel is actually a prominent and active enforcer of order, so he should actually go into the protectors category. And yeah, and that's actually what I did, because this person was right in my opinion. But for the citizens, Aoife, for example, would be just a citizen because he's just a vet, and also in his demo, he also says that he's not a warrior, or, well, he doesn't want to be a warrior. And Jianyun is also like the same with Zhongli and Venti. She's in secret like the Adepti, but she, for the outside, just wants to be a citizen. And Lanyan is also doing her rattan work. Faruzan is, well, a 100-year-old, well, teacher. She is also just hanging out at the academia. Wanderer, well, wiped his entire Fatui Scaramouche existence away, so it says in his name that he's a wanderer. And also, I can't just wait for him to kick the Tory's ass. Okay, but moving on. Sucrose is also just an alchemist. I don't think she has a part in the Knights of Favonius, but if she does, then it's basically, I guess, only just in a lower position and not like Albedo has. Lynette, the same with Linny. She is also like undercover, but for the outside, she's just a assistant for a magician. Kadehara Kazuha is obviously also a wandering samurai. And for Yume Mizuki, she's also just has her bathhouse she's operating. And then we have the Cryo Isle. There, for the protectors, I mean, Kaya is in the Knights of Favonius, the same with Yula. Mika has also part-taking entities like the cartographer, and he also goes out on expeditions with those two. And for the citizen category, Changyung is an exorcist, and while that also might fall under the protector category, he mostly does it as like a citizen would do, like a normal job, because he, well, isn't really called out by Ningguang to like, oh yes, now you're the most capable one, you are like, you do this now. He basically does it like a normal job. Gigi is, well, the assistant of Baiju. Shenhe is also an exorcist. The same with Jongyun. And she also later, when she comes like from the back from the mountains, I mean, she has been just living in the mountains and is kind of still is. She takes a job in the One Mean restaurant. Layla is just a student. Diana is a barkeeper. Rosaria is, well, in secret protecting the city. The same with Dio, actually. But Rosaria is just a nun. Fremine is also just a diver, but also in secret working with the Fatui. And Charlotte is also just a journalist, and also Escoffier is a retired chef. Well, she's not working at the Hotel de Bord anymore, but she's still cooking, so you know. And then we have the Hydro Island. And for the Hydro Island in the protector category, Jinche is actually, well, from a wealthy and known family. But not only that, he has like the fighting skills from like the Guhua school. So also his story quest, I think, was all about protecting the weak. So he's not only worthy, but he's also pretty much capable of being a protector. And Candace also, well, is constantly protecting the Aru village. And a child is actually a debt collector, I would say. So even though he loves fighting, he's also qualified to be a protector, you know, from the Northlane Bank. Because he provides the city with it. Well, the more higher ups, but he's still collecting the debt that needs to be collected. Yeah, and then Nilu is just a dancer. Barbara is also a nun. Mona, well, in her story quest, it was all about finding a new home and living like her life, trying to finance her, yeah, what she's doing with her hydromancy and all that stuff. And then, of course, Cedrine, who's just a nurse. And then, at the very end, we have the Electro Island, where one of the deputies is also Keqing, because, well, she also helps Ningguang. And for the citizens, Auroran is... oh, I'm so sorry. Pronouncing in English. Auroran is just living his normal life out in the fields. Beidou is also just, well, traveling through the seas to also trade supplies and all that stuff. I mean, Kazuha is with her on that ship. And Dory is also just a very scammy merchant. And Lisa is actually also a part of the Knights of Favonius, but she's just a librarian, so I would argue that she doesn't have like this very important job of being a protector. I mean, not like Mika, Yula, and Kaya, where they really like go out on expeditions and do something for the city. Lisa is just like handing out books and making sure they return in time, you know. That's just a simple job, so yeah. And Razor also, he lives in the wild, so he's of course just a citizen. And we also have Inefa here. I put also Inefa here because, well, she's just a robo-maid, and whatever was going on in the Archon quest, she's still just a robo-maid, and she's, well, you know, she has Aino back at her home, so she's also going to go back to her and will just keep being a maid. And then we of course have Kuki Shinobu, who's hanging out with the Arataki gang. But that wasn't all, because we also have the Olympic Games. Meaning, Natlan, a tournament of the elements. First, every vision bearer with the same element fights against a vision bearer who uses the same weapon type. The mixed element fights begin once there is one winner of each weapon type of each element. And that comes from the pilgrimage, or basically the second the second type of the pilgrimage, where there are versus fights. And this would be basically that, like, first every elemental island has to decide which character they will put for which weapon. So meaning we have, for example, Shenhe, Rosaria, and Mika, who all have a cryovision and who all wield a polearm. So that means they would have to fight against each other, and whoever comes out on top will then have to fight against a different element, but with, I guess, the same weapon type. Yes, the same weapon type. And that would be then until a winner comes out with the element. Then Leoe, a cooking contest. And not just any cooking contest, but basically it would have to do with the lantern ride, or more precisely said, the Moon Chase Festival, because that was very heavily tied with cooking. Sumeru, a search for a crown that ends with a relay swinging through trees. And that is obviously taken from the Interdarshan Championship, where you have like the kind of relay at the end, or well, basically it was the point to bring the crown back. I like skipped the whole part before that and just put that in. And then for Mondstadt, it would be a music contest that also would have something to do with the Windbloom Festival. You also notice now that I put Nod-Krai to Snezhnaya, because I'm trying to make this one island. So whatever festival, event, or maybe even just a culture will be present there, I will try to consider both of them in like one Olympic game. And then Fontaine, detective work, assembling in a murder trial. A killer has to be found from a murder case. It has to be inspired by a film. And that is basically, just how the AO3's Mécanique d'Analyse Cardinale operates. And and also a bit sprinkled in with Danganronpa. If you know that game, you know what I'm trying to do here. But obviously nobody will die. You know, it's just all for the theater, just for show. But it also has to be a bit like inspired by a film, trying to also sprinkle a bit in from the film festival we had in Fontaine. And then Inazuma, a drawing contest inspired by the Sakura tree. It's not important how good the drawing is, but rather how creative. And that is from the actual very first Inazuma event, if I'm not mistaken, the Hues of the Violet Garden, where it's all about, where Albedo had to draw the, like, you know what I mean, if you know the event. And that would be the Olympic Games, and that's also the end of this very short fanfiction of mine. You also see that you can leave a comment here on Archive of Our Own. You don't have to register, you don't need an account, but I think if you want to comment, you will have to put in your email address. And if you don't want to do that, that's fine, you don't have to comment. But you can give kudos, which are basically just like likes on YouTube. So if you want to give that to this little fanfiction of mine, you can do that. And now we arrived at the end of this video. That was, the read out story of mine from Archive of Our Own, AO3. And now for my future plans. I will probably make a video once Nod-Krai characters have come out, meaning a year from now on, basically for the next big summer event when that's coming up. So there would be a bunch of characters that would have been released, and not only from Nod-Krai, but also probably from other nations as well. And I know that might take a very long time. And if you have forgotten about me at that point, that's fine and understandable. But yeah, I would also then would continue with like then when we would get Snezhnaya, and then all the Snezhnaya characters would get out, or also more characters from other nations, and then an update video to that. And we'll see what the future will bring.